Well, good morning and happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Balance in Life, where we're going to learn some great organizing tips for our schedules, for our spaces, for our lives. We have two dynamic extension agents in family and consumer sciences walking us through this conversation today. We have Rhonda Peters from North Carolina and North Carolina A&T State University, and Karen Tanner with Virginia Cooperative Extension. So happy to have you all joining us today. As we go through the dialogue and the discussion today, if you have thoughts or commentary, we'd love to have you post those in the chat box. A quick reminder that in this version of Zoom webinar, your first option, that's the default, whatever you post will only show to those of us that you see cameras for. So myself, our two presenters, and my co-host, Bethany Eigel. We'd love for you to post so that everyone can see it, but that will require you to click the drop-down menu that says all panelists and attendees. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback and share those to all panelists and attendees. Having said that, I just want to welcome you again on behalf of Virginia Cooperative Extension, Human Development Program Team, and North Carolina Cooperative Extension to this session. I'm going to quickly turn it over to our first speaker, which will be Rhonda Peters. So welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Crystal said, my name is Rhonda Peters. I am a single mother to three amazing children. Lily, my oldest, is 16 and just got her driver's license. I have a son who is 11, just started middle school, and then I have a daughter who is 4. No, she's in 4th grade, sorry. She is 9 and in 4th grade. Zachary and Megan both are heavily involved in sports, and one of them's on a travel team. I'm also taking 2 master's classes this semester. So as you can see, I'm pretty busy, and I know I'm not the only one that is. So what I want you to do, first of all, is to go ahead and enter into the chat some of those roles that you're balancing right now. So again, as Crystal said, use the drop box to make sure that you're putting all panelists and attendees in there. But tell us a little bit about what you're balancing. If you're trying to be a parent, if you're working full time, if you're trying to help your kids with their work, just go ahead and enter that in for us, just so we can kind of get an idea what everybody's doing. So we've got a mom and a 4-H agent, teacher, taxi driver. Oh yes, friend, wife, family member. Lots of stuff going on. Volunteer, and that's important too. Parenting, taking online classes. So yes, we all have a lot of things to juggle. And so today what we're going to talk about is just some things that I've learned from my personal life, as well as some, of the things I've learned professionally that can help us to balance all of these things. So the first thing that I wanted to get started with is probably a story that most of you have probably already heard, but I'm going to review it really quickly for you. There was a story of a professor one time who was having a class, and he got out a big jar, and he brought out a platter full of big fist-sized rocks, and he started putting all the rocks in the jar until it reached the top, and he asked his class if it was full. And of course they all said, yeah, it's full, it's full. Well, then he got out some more pebbles, and he started sprinkling them in, and they kind of fell in between the rocks and again reached the top. And he said, well, now is it full? And they said, yeah, it's full. I didn't know there was still room, but there was. And so then he didn't say anything else, and he got some sand, and he started putting sand in there. And of course the sand got all down through everything and filled up a lot of those nooks and crannies. And he said, well, now is it full? Well, they all said, of course, now I can't see anything. But then he even pulled out a bottle of water, and he poured water on top of that. And water just kind of soaked through all the sand until literally there was no more room in there. Well, what's the moral of that story, and why do we bring it out? If we fill up that jar first with all the sand and all the water, there's not going to be any room to put in all those big rocks, right? So when we're trying to figure out our schedule, we really need to think about what is most important to us. How do we get those big rocks done first, so then we can add in and sprinkle in all the pebbles and sand. And part of that means realizing that it's okay to say some of the stuff that we thought was important is really just sand, and we got to let some of it go. So let's get started. One of the things that you need to do, first of all, is to set your expectations before the first day. Now, when I first saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, the first day? You mean I've already screwed up? I've already failed? My kids are already back in school. I don't know about Virginia, but North Carolina is already back in school. And I'm like, I've already messed up. Well, you know what? That frustration actually helps us relate to our kids, because how many times have we felt like our kids are already saying, I'm already messed up. I missed this assignment. I missed that assignment. I didn't know I had to be logged in. So, when we get frustrated, just imagine The frustration we feel is the same frustration that our kids feel. So just sometimes we just have to change our frame of mind. So even though it says the first day, maybe it's not the first day of school. Maybe it's the first day of next week, or the first day that we're going to make a change. The first day is whatever day we define it to be, okay? So just change our mind frame a little bit and help our kids to change their mind frames, because sometimes that perspective is really what is, really important. Communication is key with any kind of thing that you're talking about. When your family is involved, communication is key. And I am a huge fan of family meetings. So setting expectations as a family together is really important. One of the first things that I suggest that you do is evaluate the previous year. So the end of last year, from March through May, what worked, what didn't work. Did you, as the adult, did you feel like you concentrated so much on trying to get your kids' stuff done that you didn't get your work stuff done? Or were you so afraid that you were going to get fired from working at home and not being productive that you really weren't there for your kids? Those were some things that you had to think about, right? But what did our kids have to struggle with? Did they feel ignored because we were so busy? What worked for them and what didn't work for them? My oldest daughter does fabulously on the internet. In fact, I think that she would actually prefer to be at home working on the internet instead of having to be at school. It worked for her. But my son, it did not work for him. So let's use that family meeting to ask them what worked. What do we need to change and what don't we need to change? And then also ask them to help you establish the ground rules for the year. So what kinds of ground rules do you think might be appropriate when you're talking about a schedule? So go ahead, again, use your chat function and type in some of your ideas for what you think might be some appropriate ground rules for your schedule. Having the same bedtime and wake up time is absolutely important. Yes. Limit the computer playtime to after the work is done, okay? So, Wendy, I think that's a great idea. Some people say, wait until after work is done. Some people say, well, I need a brain break. I need to sprinkle it in there. Together, decide on what works for your family. Deciding on it together, talking to them, letting them have input. So a family meeting is not a time for you to come in and say, I'm the parent and this is my rule and I just want you here so you all hear the rules. That's not what the family meeting is. The family meeting is when you say to your child, what do you think should happen? And you all consider it together and then decide what it's going to be. And then what the consequences would actually be if that rule wasn't followed through that you have all decided on. Research actually shows that the more involved they are in helping you to set those rules, the more likely they are to actually cooperate and follow those rules. And when we're living in times like this, who's not going to be appreciative of a little extra cooperation, right? So the first meeting that you need to do is think about those rocks, those pebbles, and what's sand in your family. Now, this is something that's going to be unique to every family. I can't sit here and say, okay, these are the rocks. Everybody needs to write down these rocks, because my rocks are different than your rocks, right? Now, some of the ideas that we know is those things that are mandatory should probably be the big rocks. They have to be done. That's why they're mandatory, right? So when your kids have to be live, make sure that you know, okay, that's a mandatory thing. I can't change that. I can't move it around. I have to make sure my kids are available live. The same thing goes for you. Evaluate your schedule. Is there a meeting you have to attend? Is there a phone call you have to make at a certain time? Make sure that everybody is aware. And in that first meeting, make sure everybody is aware of when those things are so you can fit those in as the big rocks. And then you can start putting your secondary pebbles and sand all around that. So what do you think some of the other pebbles might be? Any ideas? Go ahead and put some ideas in your chat box of what some of those pebbles. I've got a list, if you can see it. Some of those you might consider rocks, some might be pebbles, and then you have things in your own family. But go ahead and put in the chat some of the things that you might consider to be pebbles. So pebbles, again, are the things that are still important. They need to be done. They're not the most important, but they're not ones that you can dismiss either. So they're not ones that you can say, oh, that's just sand. Pebbles still have to be accomplished. So go ahead and write some ideas of what your family pebbles might be. Laundry, yes, it's got to happen. It may not have to be done at 8 o'clock in the morning, but laundry has to be done for sure. Or you'll be sitting on Zooms with clothes that don't match, but that's okay too, right? So yes, grocery shopping has to get done. Chores have to get done. Making the beds have to get done. Absolutely. Great ideas, guys. So one of the things that I always want to encourage you when you're thinking about your schedule too is make sure that you're planning time for brain breaks, because kids can't be expected, and neither can adults really. I mean, when we first got on this call, Bethany was already talking about how she's already been on 2 or 3 Zooms already, and it's just barely 10 o'clock. Well, I'm sorry, but our brains have to disengage at some point. I'm sure Bethany needs a brain break at some point. So think about planning for those brain breaks. What ideas do you have for some good brain breaks? Share those with us in the chat too, if you can. You know, think about things that kids can do and adults can do, even using our hands. So whether it's making a craft, playing with Legos, you know, petting the dog, deep breathing. Okay, I like that too. A short walk in the neighborhood. Yes. All of those things get our everything moving and pumping and helping our brains to work better. Absolutely. Good job. Good job. Okay. You can go to there you go. So after you start thinking about this, or after you've decided which ones for your family are the rocks and which ones are the pebbles, you want to go ahead and establish a consistent schedule. Consistency is the key. We hear it all the time about kids. Consistency is key for little kids, but it's key for us adults too, right? When we know what's coming and when kids know what's coming, they really do thrive in that. And I know sometimes we get to the point where we don't want to have that schedule, right? So if my kids have to be online at 8 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, well, on Tuesday and Thursday, maybe we need to sleep in just a little bit, right? Because we don't have to be on at 8 o'clock. Well, that's really not good for us. Even though it's tempting, it's really not good for us. We need to make sure that we try to set the same schedule, that we're up at the same time, because that way kids know what to expect and parents know what to expect. Also, if we know that every day at 3 o'clock we're going to have a break, well, don't push that break off till 5 o'clock because you decide it's not important. Kids are looking forward to that break. They're looking forward to that snack or whatever else is going on. And you don't want to disappoint them just because you decided to change the schedule right then. I know that we all have to learn flexibility, but we also have to learn consistency too. And sometimes consistency is harder to learn than flexibility. All right, so one of the other pebbles that you need to think about is, how to plan for those meal times and snack times, because that can really mess up your schedule. One of my questions I hate most in my family is, Mom, what's for supper? And it seems like every day I have to answer this question. And every day I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it. I have 3 extremely picky kids, and I am an extremely picky eater myself. But if we take time at the beginning of the week when we're having our family meeting to think about our meal times and to plan those out at the beginning, then we don't have to stress about it every day. When they come to me on Wednesday and say, what's for dinner? I'll say, well, what did we decide as a family? What are we going to have? If I have that conversation at the beginning of the week, I don't have to struggle every day. And another good idea that you can have is actually, especially if you have multiple children, assign one of them a day. Say, okay, you've got Monday, you've got Tuesday, you've got Wednesday. You plan it and you tell me, here's your budget, especially if they're older, here's your budget, and here's the nutrition guidelines you got to stay in. But it's up to you. You tell me. And if you have trouble, trying to plan that, your FCS agents in all counties in both of our states have plenty of resources to help you with that. But, plan for those things, and that'll help your schedule to go better, and you won't have to fight about it every day. And don't forget family time. I know it feels like, especially right now, that we're together all the time. And sometimes it feels like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't get a minute to myself. But when was the last time you were together on purpose? So not just occupying the same space, not sitting at the same table, but that you were actually planning. We're going to go for that bike ride that somebody mentioned earlier. We're going to have family game night. We're going to just talk to each other. Make sure you schedule that. Make sure you plan that. Don't let that become sand that just gets, filled in. Make sure you consider that a pebble that really has to be scheduled, because that's not something that you want to just let happen. Those are the things that are important to help our family thrive through all of these things. And adult time is important too. I love this picture, and I have it posted in my office because it's true. How many of us would let our phones get down to that little bit of battery? We can live without our phones, right? But we do it to ourselves all the time, and we really shouldn't. We can't take care of anybody else if we're not fully charged and ready to take care of ourselves. So make sure that you schedule. So put in the chat right now, I want you to go ahead and, if you can, put in the chat some of the things that you do to charge your own batteries, especially as we're balancing these different roles, because sometimes what we keep doing all the time stops working. So if we can get ideas from other people then that might give us some ways to keep charging. So please, yes, sleeping, absolutely, in a relaxing bath. Sometimes it doesn't cost any money. Sometimes you still don't have to go outside the house for it. A long hot bath is, somebody else said, music and reading a novel. Exercise always helps. Absolutely. Great job. Great job. Keep them coming. Okay, next slide. And you remember how we were talking a minute ago that if you don't have to have a meeting at 8, maybe you can sleep in that morning? Well, we really don't need to do that Monday through Friday, but the weekends are a perfect time. I love this slide. We were talking about it earlier. On weekends, please, I can sleep as late as I want to, within reason, of course. You still have to take care of your kids. If they're up, you can't let them wander around with knives and stuff, but you can get up, but you can still have a schedule-free weekend. So planning that break is important for your entire family. So go ahead and type into the chat some of the things that you could look forward to doing on the weekend that you didn't have to be in a set schedule for. Again, use that during your family meeting and say, if everything goes right this week and everybody's doing what they're supposed to, how can we celebrate this weekend on our schedule-free time? Type some ideas in there if you want to. Stay in PJs all morning. Oh, wait, we don't do that now. Just kidding. Okay, next slide. Now, here's a time we're going to do a really quick poll real quick when Crystal gets it up for us. Really quick, have you ever forgotten a password that you needed when you were trying to log on to a website? Yes or no? It's not, don't think about it long and hard, just yes or no. Have you ever forgotten a password that you needed when trying to log into a website? I can't see the results. I don't know when the results are coming up.
You are at almost 100% yes. We got one person who said no.
When that one person, hats off to you. Please share in the box what you do to help us not forget your password, because we all need to learn from you, apparently. But, it's frustrating for us, isn't it? As adults, when we're logging in, I can't remember this password. If it's that frustrating for us, how much harder is it for our children? Sometimes we expect they should know this. But if we get confused, why can't we take a step back and say, yeah, I forget too, honey, it's okay. But instead of dealing with all that frustration, if you take the time, again, at the beginning, and plan just a little bit and make a list. Think about your usernames, think about passwords, think about websites that are going to have to be used or apps, even put your teacher's emails addresses on there. Sometimes their phone numbers or cell phone, but if you make a list where it's handy, you can even put it up somewhere in their own space where they can have access to it. But just really think about that. If we mess up, kids do too, and let's just give them some grace, right? Okay, so then we get to talk about the sand and the water. So the sand is the things that, kind of get in there that are still important, but maybe not the most important. But then that water can sometimes be the things that we really, it's just extra, right? So we really need to reduce the distractions and the time wasters. My teenage daughter, God bless her, she thinks that if that phone rings, she has to answer it, or if it buzzes or vibrates or whatever it is it's doing with these teenager phones, right? But she thinks it has to be answered right there. And as adults and people who are working for, people who pay us that expect us to answer when they call, we think we have to answer it immediately too. Same thing with our email. But you know what? We really don't have to answer it necessarily immediately. I know people who set times that say, I'm going to check my email right when I come in for work, right before I leave for lunch, and about an hour before I leave. And they set 3 times a day to check their email, and that's it. Because if you're checking email every time it dings, you're getting distracted from whatever else that you're working on. So for adults, sometimes it's the phone and the email, but for kids, sometimes it's games, like Fortnite. Oh, Mom, let me play this one last round. But that last round takes 20 minutes, or it takes whatever. If these are things that's important to you, I'm sorry. I like Facebook. I like to scroll Facebook. I'm not saying, notice that the words here isn't eliminate these distractions. It's reduce them. If I know that I like to play on Facebook, then I need to schedule a time and limit it. Say, okay, it's brought up from 4 to 4:30. You can be on Facebook. That's it. I still get my fix, but I don't let it control me. I'm controlling the amount of time that I'm doing it. Back up one more slide. I wanted to say one other thing. I want everybody to do me, please. I'm sorry, I meant to say please. I want everybody to do something for me. I know your phone is close to you, right? I can't hear you, and you don't have, don't be afraid to say it out loud because nobody can hear you. But I want everybody to grab your phone and pretend that your boss is on the phone and they're talking to you. So everybody grab your phone, put it up on your ear, pretend like you're talking to your boss. Say whatever you want to say. Well, I'm seeing some smiles. Yeah. Okay, put it down. Put it down. Good job. Now take a deep breath. Okay, I'm hurrying. Take a deep breath. Stand up. Pretend the phone's ringing again and stand up. Stand up with your phone. Everybody stand up. Okay, now put it on your ear and have that same conversation. Did that conversation change when you stood up? Sometimes just simply by standing up when you answer the phone, that is a way to keep to focus that presentation or focus your conversation back to a professional. Let's get it done. Let's focus on what we're doing so that we're not wasting time just having general conversation. It's not, hey girl, what's going on? It's focused and it's moving on. Okay, Crystal says I have to move on too. So let's keep going real quick. Another thing that I think is really important is for us to take time to focus on the positive. In my family, at the end of the day, we try to write down every day 2 things. One thing that I personally did right that day, and one thing that worked well for our family that day. Put it in a jar that you can look up at maybe at the next family meeting, or maybe next time your whole family is just in chaos. Okay, what did we do? What's working well for our family? So find those strengths and make sure that we're capturing those strengths. And the last thing that I wanted to say is to make sure that all of these rocks that we're dealing with, they all represent something that's important to us, whether it's our kids, whether it's our personal goals, whether it's work stuff, it's all stuff that's important to us. And we need to make sure that we're showing grace to the people that we're interacting with, even our kids' teachers, even our kids, and yes, even ourselves. Make sure that we give ourselves permission to say, it's okay. It may not have been perfectly, but it's okay. The last thing I want you to do is type into the chat box, what is one thing that you're going to be willing to commit to in implementing this week to improve your organizational, your family schedule and your organization. So everybody, please type in one thing that you are willing to commit to implementing this week. Please. A dinner schedule, I like it. Establishing meals at the beginning of the week. Letting each child plan a meal. Like I said, we have resources to help if you want those. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly because I don't want to keep you guys much longer than we normally do. So I talk fast, but I'm going to try to talk not too fast this time to try to get us through everything. But I'm Karen Tanner. I'm an FCS agent with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Prior to being with Extension, I was an elementary school teacher and an elementary school principal, and then worked with student teachers at a local university and training them as well. So when it comes to at-home learning and school space, this is kind of my niche and something that I really enjoy building on my background experience and my previous experience, in addition to the crazy dynamics of my family. So I have a college student, I have a now freshman in high school, and a 4-year-old. So you can imagine when COVID hit, it was crazy dynamics with a college student that was now suddenly stuck at home, didn't go back to school after spring break. She was trying to get her finals done. I had a student trying to finish 8th grade. And then in the midst of it, there was a 3-year-old running rampant while my husband and I were both at home trying to work. So I will tell you, and I'll admit, I'll talk about it again in a minute, that our first plan was out the window. Like we tried what we tried once and it wasn't working, and the arguments so we had to completely restructure. I'm happy to say my 20-year-old is now back at school. So that kind of takes that one piece of the craziness out. But it's still an interesting dynamic at home. And so we really did have to define some learning space. So what I'm going to do, you can go ahead and switch it, Crystal, is talk about why it's so important. And this is not my child, although my husband swore it was. I stole this from a friend. But why this defined space? So, we've seen this picture. There's been interesting memes all over Facebook about kids that are just done. Like they're done before the first day is even over. And what is that value of creating that dedicated home learning space? So it's going to make our child aware that learning is a priority. If we've established a space, our children know that that's important to us. It's important to our family. So having that defined space, there's a lot of value in that. It's going to create ownership and control for your child amongst this chaos. This is different for them. This isn't what they're used to. It was kind of a temporary, okay, this is great in spring and we've got some home time, but now all of a sudden it's a reality for so much of us. It also helps our family and our children really stay organized and on task. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can do that. And it's going to sharpen your child's focus and motivation to learn. So we can go ahead and switch to that next slide for me. I want to stress that we need to plan for your needs and your family and not for Pinterest. I know it is so tempting to get on Pinterest and look at all these fabulous learning spaces and all these great things. And it's great for some ideas, but let's talk about practical reality. It's not going to work. And it may not work for my family. So it's great to go on and look for an idea on how to organize this, but planning for what our family needs. So I want you guys to think about that as we ask yourself these questions. So going back to what Rhonda mentioned earlier about the communication and the family meeting time, this is a great topic of questions. You can use these questions during that family conversations and really kind of ask your children, ask your family, what are your schedules? Are they fully virtual? Are they hybrid? Are you homeschooled? And what is that going to have to look like? Are there multiple learners? Are they going to do better working together? Or is it better, in my case, to split them into different places in the house and definitely have them apart? Are parents working from home? And is it better to have that space shared or not? You know, for some of us, and Crystal, right behind Crystal's face in there is her children's desks. And she's been doing Zoom sessions with her kids behind her because they need to be accessible to her. In some cases, my husband could not be accessible when he was working. It was more of a distraction for him. So we had to kind of separate that space. Will your child respond better in the middle of the action or maybe tucked away in their own space? So my 3-year-old will not sit still unless he thinks he's not missing something. So he's got to be in the middle of the action, where, you know, my middle schooler, I needed to separate him. He needed to be away from where all the distractions were. Think about if there's extra space in your home that you can use. So use what you have. Is there a corner of a dining room table? Is there a small alcove? Is there an extra closet that you could clear out and create kind of a shut door, open door learning space that you're able to kind of shut that door and walk away, which has got some value to it? Do you have a spare bedroom? Is there space in the child's bedroom that can be utilized for a learning space? Maybe you've got a garage, a sunroom, a screened-in porch, something that could use. But most importantly is that you create that identified space that your child helps you choose. So it doesn't matter where, as long as everyone in the family knows that that is going to be where the learning is happening for that child. And again, it may be different from child to child in different spaces, but that is identified where the learning is going to happen. Creating that space. And so I've got some pictures of some examples, but think about, is it someplace that you can have easily accessible supplies and materials? So are you able to grab them easily? Is there a place for schedules and lists of assignments? So thinking about clear page protectors that can be attached someplace or set in front of them and pulled out on a regular basis. Why clear page protectors? Because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to change it. And the schedule is going to change and you can switch that out. But also for a child that likes control or needs to be able to stay on task, dry erase markers are the bomb. They can mark right on those clear page protectors and check off their tasks. They can go through and mark through their schedule as they work through the day, clocking off their time, and it wipes off at the end of the day and you start fresh for the next day. Think about having charger stations and access to a power outlet. So you don't want to be in a space that you can't run an extension cord, you're not able to have a powering source or a charge, because so many of our schools are sending the laptops, the iPads, things for our kids to work on. Make sure that those can be easily charged or continually powered as needed. Do you need a timer or a clock nearby? Yes or no? Some kids don't need a clock. Some kids, that's a distraction. Some people need to have that timer to break down the day into smaller groups. Use what you already have. So think about shoe boxes, storage containers, cardboard boxes to create the corral. So if you look at the pictures that we have right here, the top one with little Ryan has got his blue, not a very distracted, 3 fold out. You can purchase these in any craft or supply, school supply stores, but you can also make them out of cardboard boxes and create kind of that corral space that kind of defines that space. Again, you take it down and they're at a kitchen table and the kitchen table works like a kitchen table normally functions when it's not that defined space. Also allows room to kind of store things. Down below was a picture that was shared that shows those 2 corrals that are 2 children sharing the same space, but their defined space is very different and is separated. And so they're able to kind of work together, convenient for parents, but it is separated. And then the small cart there kind of rolls that rolling cart. So this is actually at a friend of mine's dining room table. She did this back in March. she had, or April, she had the supplies right there and readily available. She was able to pull it over to the table to work with her kids and then push it back away and knew where everything was. Everything was stored on that cart throughout the day. All right, let in the light. So just to stress that light is a great thing. Our kids need that natural source of blue light to increase productivity and alertness and focus. So try to position that workspace, if possible, somewhere near the natural light. If not, you can also use blue enriched LED light bulbs if you're working in a place that's a little bit darker. If weather permits, send them outside. There's no reason these kids cannot read outside in their block of open free reading time. If it's an activity that they're just focusing on that's not requiring maybe a writing space, send them outside to do that. Let them read on their front porch. Get them outside as much as possible. Next slide, quiet is key. So quiet, the quieter the space is, the better it is for learning. And we know that, but make sure when you're trying to identify a space that it is free from foot traffic, constant chaos. Utilize kind of that learning fort. So you could define a space. If you've got some kids that have some sensory issues, you can define space with sheets, make a fort over top of a couple of chairs to make it really easy to be able to kind of separate that space for some students. Think about introducing certain kinds of music, so instrumental, classical, ambient music that can be used to boost their auditory, visual, spatial, and motor areas of the brain. Thinking about having some headphones is a great idea to kind of be able to let that child know that they're focused in. Maybe schedule that from when you've got other meetings going on or phone calls that need to be taken, or other siblings have Zoom sessions going on at the same time. This might be that quiet music time for this child, and trying to balance that. Next one. All right, giving that child ownership. And we have talked about this. Rhonda stressed it in making that schedule. I'm going to stress it just as much here, that allowing the child to have that ownership, decorating that space, making it personalized is going to create that they're likely to motivate to use it and to keep it organized and clean if it is their space. So think about using not only their own decorations, even stuffed animals if they're not distracting, but options for more active children is to replacing a normal chair, maybe not even the whole day, for part of the day, as an exercise ball that can get some of those wiggles out, and the stretch band idea on the chair. So strapping that stretch band to the bottom of chair legs so that the child isn't constantly kicking the counter underneath or kicking the table and distracting siblings or other adults. They're able to kind of kick that band or bounce on that band with their foot and get a little exercise, but it also kind of keeps that distraction down and calms down some of those itchy legs. And the next slide. There we go. One of our final things I want to talk about is establishing the ground rules. And Rhonda mentioned that in some of our communication strategies is establishing the ground rules, but I'm talking more about specific space. In that defined space, are you going to allow food? Plan ahead of time before you're upset because that glass of milk got spilt all over all of their papers they were working on. So is food allowed in that space? Can they chew gum? We know that that increases productivity and attention for kids. If they have parents and older siblings that are also working from home, is there a way for the child to alert them when they need help so that you don't have a kid that walks in on your Zoom session and is suddenly mom, 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 mom? You've got some way for them to alert you that they need help, or an older sibling when they need help. And that happens between my middle school and my college student, is he would go in and ask her questions and she would be in the middle of writing a paper or working on something for a final and would get frustrated that the brother was asking for questions. So having a way to kind of alert that I do need help as soon as you get a chance to come to me. And I think one of the most important things that we talked about is establishing that routine in that schedule that Rhonda mentioned, but making sure that you set that transition downtime. So just saying that they need some brain breaks, you also need to transition back into your family time. So the end of the day, think about using that time to kind of close down, clean up your space. You're finished for the day. If you have a hybrid child that's going back and forth from home to school, pack that book bag now while everything is in front of you. Chargers are right there. Make sure that everything is packed so that their devices return to school the next day as they're supposed to. So you've got to make sure that you've got that transition downtime and that you have organized and cleaned up that space. Nothing's worse than coming into that room the next day and it is a hot mess and you've got to clean it before you can start learning. So, getting up, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, having breakfast, showing up in your space that's defined, and then being able to transition out of that space throughout the day when those break times come in, and certainly at the end of the day when you're trying to get ready for the next day. And finally, we're going to talk again about grace. So you've got to give yourself grace and be flexible. That first attempt, I told y'all it was a hot mess, and like I'm the guru in this, you know, trying to organize time and space and at-home learning. Like, I got this. No, it totally went out the window, and we had to restructure and change and start back over. And so I'm definitely more prepared for this time around. But know that don't invest a lot of time and a lot of effort in your original plan until you know it's going to work. So run a trial period. You know, don't go repurchase or purchase all these things and renovate an area of your space of your house until you know that that's the space that you need. So really kind of take time. I plan on working from the dining room table for my son to start until I figure out what he's going to need in order to create that space in a designated location for him. So he's going to start his year working and transitioning. So be flexible, have grace. And let me know if I can help you guys with any ideas or questions as we work through.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen and Rhonda. And I think a big takeaway, in addition to the tips and the strategies, is the flexibility and the grace with ourselves, with our kids, with others. I know when we talked in planning for this session, affording grace to the teachers in the schools who are also grappling with how to make this happen, many of whom are also doing this while they're taking care of their children and their own children's schooling. So thank you for this great list of suggestions and food for thought. For those of you who are on, and those of you, those who registered but weren't able to log on, we will send the slide deck to you along with the recording of this session. You can access that and any previous sessions on our Virginia Cooperative Extension website. And having said that, I thank you all for being here today. Thanks again, Rhonda and Karen and Bethany. Appreciate the session. All have a fantastic weekend. Remember that picture of laying in the bed and holding up the coffee? That is like my ideal start to the morning with PJ. So do something to recharge your batteries this weekend, and take care all. Bye.